Ocean Park Ferris Wheel Fall. On October 3, 1999, the Ocean Park amusement park in Hong Kong was packed with weekend visitors. Among them was 23-year-old Sabrina Weller, a German tourist who boarded the park's 200-foot Ferris wheel for a quiet view of Victoria Harbor. Halfway through the ride, witnesses heard a metallic snap followed by terrified screams. Sabrina's gondola door had not been properly locked, and the latch gave way as the wheel jolted to a stop. Her cabin tilted sharply forward. She tried to grab the side rail, but the movement threw her off balance. For a few seconds, onlookers below saw her hanging by one arm, shouting for help as the wind pulled her away. Then she lost her grip and fell nearly 60 meters, striking the concrete platform below. The crowd went silent before the panic erupted, families rushing away, staff running toward the base. Emergency workers reached her within minutes, but the fall had been instantly fatal. The ride remained frozen in place, its cabins swaying gently above the scene, while horrified visitors watched from behind police tape. Haunted Castle Fire at Six Flags. On May 11, 1984, the Six Flags Great Adventure Park in New Jersey was buzzing with weekend visitors. Among them was 17-year-old Abigail Keene, who entered the park's haunted castle with her group of friends. The attraction was a dim, twisting maze built from connected semi-trailers filled with fake cobwebs, strobe lights, and loud sound effects. But behind the scares, the walls were lined with foam padding and cheap plastic decorations, materials that were extremely flammable. As Abigail's group moved deeper inside, a spark from a lighter, possibly flicked by another visitor, caught the foam on fire. At first, people thought it was part of the show. The smoke fit the atmosphere, and the dim red lighting hid the growing flames. Within minutes, thick black smoke filled the corridors, turning the maze into a furnace. Panic broke out as people ran in circles, unable to find the exit. Witnesses outside said they heard screams coming from the walls, but couldn't tell where they were coming from. The narrow hallways acted like chimneys, funneling the smoke faster through the structure. Firefighters arrived minutes later but could barely enter due to the heat. When the blaze was finally put out, Abigail and 7 others were found huddled together near a dead-end hallway, overcome by smoke and trapped by collapsing walls. The entire structure had burned to the ground in less than 15 minutes, leaving behind nothing but twisted metal frames and charred debris. Expedition Everest Platform Fall. On March 13, 2011, at Disney's Animal Kingdom in Florida, 52-year-old Scott Hewitt, a maintenance technician, began his overnight shift inspecting the park's massive Expedition Everest roller coaster. The ride, built to resemble a Himalayan mountain, reached speeds of 50 miles per hour through dark tunnels and steep drops. Around 3 a.m., Scott climbed onto a maintenance platform high above the track to check a motion sensor near one of the coaster's inclines. Surveillance footage later showed him stepping backward to adjust his flashlight, and in that moment, he lost his footing. There were no guardrails in that section, and he plunged nearly 25 feet onto the steel track below. The impact fractured his skull and spine instantly. Nearby workers heard the crash echo through the empty park and rushed to his location, finding him motionless between the rails. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but he was already gone. The sound of his tools still clattering across the platform was the only sign of what had happened. His co-workers later said he was one of the most careful men on the job, which made his fall all the more chilling. Darien Lake Ride, Ejection. On June 8, 2011, 29-year-old James Hackamer, a U.S. Army veteran, arrived at Darien Lake Theme Park in New York with his family. He had lost both his legs in a roadside bomb explosion during the Iraq War, but had spent years recovering, eager to live a normal life again. That evening, he decided to try the park's main attraction, the Ride of Steel, a towering hypercoaster that launched riders over 200 feet into the air. Staff secured the lap bar across his waist, unaware that the missing lower body made it impossible for the restraint to lock properly. As the train crested the highest hill and dove at nearly 70 miles per hour, witnesses later said they saw Hackamer's body rise slightly from the seat. On the next steep turn, the lap bar shifted, and in a split second, he was ejected completely from the car. People standing near the track screamed as they saw him fly out, falling more than 150 feet and landing in a grassy field beside the coaster. His family, who had been on the ride with him, watched helplessly as emergency staff rushed over. Paramedics confirmed he died instantly from blunt force trauma. The ride came to a slow stop moments later, silent except for the cries of his relatives. Alton Towers Smiler Crash. On June 2, 2015, Alton Towers was packed with visitors eager to ride the Smiler, a record-breaking roller coaster boasting 14 loops, the most in the world. Among them was 19-year-old Aliyah Kazim and her friends, who waited over 2 hours for their turn. Rain had been falling lightly, but no one suspected the ride's sensors had already malfunctioned earlier that day. When their train was cleared to launch, another empty test train was still stuck mid-track after an earlier stall. As Aaliyah's train accelerated, it climbed into a sharp dive toward the same section, directly into the parked car. Witnesses said the sound of impact was unlike anything they'd ever heard. A thunderous metallic crash followed by screaming. The front of Aaliyah's carriage crumpled inward, trapping riders under twisted steel. Her legs were crushed completely by the collision, and she was pinned in place for nearly 5 hours before rescuers could cut her free. Blood pooled beneath the car as emergency crews worked in silence, realizing the scale of what had happened. When she was finally airlifted out, her injuries were too severe, both legs had to be amputated. Her friends suffered shattered bones and internal bleeding, while engineers found that the crash was caused by human error. The operators had manually overridden the system's safety lock, not realizing another train was still on the track. Mindbender roller coaster. On June 14, 1986, the Galaxyland amusement park in Edmonton was packed with families eager to ride the Mindbender, a massive yellow roller coaster that twisted through 3 loops under a glass roof. It was nearly midnight when 24-year-old Jennifer Gilliand and her boyfriend took seats in the last car, unaware that a small mechanical flaw was waiting to destroy the ride. The train began its climb, the clanking echoing through the building. As it plunged into its second loop, a screech cut through the air, metal grinding against metal. People on the ground saw sparks fly from the rear car, but the coaster kept moving. Then, within seconds, the rear car began swaying violently, bolts and wheel assemblies coming loose from the axles. Passengers screamed as the car slammed against the track walls, twisting sideways mid-loop. Jennifer's car detached completely, flipping upside down and smashing into a steel support beam before tumbling 20 feet onto the concrete below. The impact was so violent that onlookers thought an explosion had gone off inside the park. Debris and shattered restraints littered the ground as the rest of the train came to a stop, hanging mid-loop with riders trapped and screaming. Paramedics rushed inside the closed dome, but Jennifer and 2 others had already been killed on impact, their bodies crushed by the twisted wreckage of the coaster. Melbourne Royal Show roller coaster. On September 24, 2022, the Melbourne Royal Show was packed with families, neon lights flashing, music blaring, kids screaming with joy. But everything stopped when 26-year-old Elizabeth Lizzie Anderson climbed aboard the Rebel coaster, a small but fast carnival ride with tight turns and sharp drops. She sat in the middle car with friends, laughing and recording the ride on her phone. As the coaster accelerated around its second lap, witnesses suddenly noticed a maintenance worker crossing the track below. In seconds, chaos unfolded. Lizzie's coaster struck the worker mid-run. The impact threw the worker aside, but the force also jolted Lizzie's carriage violently. The restraint bar shifted, and she was flung partially out of the seat. With the train still in motion, she slammed against the track edge, then was dragged forward, her body scraping metal and support beams before being thrown onto the gravel below. Screams erupted from the crowd as the coaster continued rolling without stopping. Phones dropped. Children cried. People fainted watching the aftermath. Paramedics reached her minutes later, but her injuries were catastrophic. She was pronounced dead shortly after. The ride shut down immediately as shocked witnesses repeated the same thing. It all happened too fast to understand how a fun night turned into a nightmare.